unconditionally, non-conceptually. I dedicate myself to the Blessed One, who has realized the emptiness of both self and other. Who has realized pure awareness undefiled by concepts, and who is established in the continuum of unconditioned existence, consciousness. I dedicate myself to the equanimity of the true nature of all appearances, and to the supreme path beyond acceptance and rejection. When a discerning person has made this presence real and living, it is what the teachers call the pure Bodhichitta, the supremely excellent abiding in the real. This is known as the eye of discernment, because it is the ultimate knowingness. This presence is ever fresh awareness, non-conceptual, ultimate, indestructible. The supreme freedom of the noble ones comes about by realizing the fullness of this presence. Its various powers come into play from that. This is the supreme path of liberation, for without this presence, and without their total commitment to abiding in the authentic nature of mind, the immortal, exalted, and noble lineage could not have come into existence. How then is one to cultivate this continuous commitment to the Vajra, diamond-like nature? This path of the great realizers is beyond ideas such as thought and non-thought. It is subtle, not easy to comprehend, being beyond verbal conventions, difficult to point out, and not easy to investigate. We do not come to it by means of words. It is not in the domain which ordinary people experience, or accessible except by a valid approach. Therefore, rely on the oral instructions of your master, and the authoritative instructions of your teacher. We generally think about entities within a limited conceptual framework, in which affirmation and denial figure prominently. We continually grasp experience by means of thought. We use thought to validate and then to invalidate. Limitless are our ideas, unending our research. But since grasping by thought is empty, how can it lead to higher knowledge? For this reason, the conventional methods of studying topics by mentally conditioned minds is unnecessary on this path. The starting point for inquiring into this path is recognition of the characteristics that generate our limited notion of entity or thing. Things are not what they appear to be in our minds. By using the 6 kinds of grasping, we arrive only at delusion. If this mistaken way of knowing by grasping really worked, more sentient beings would be free, like the liberated arahats, who simply deny the existence of entities. Since seekers are tormented by their frustrations and ground down by time, it is obvious that they are self-deceived. If the various senses could provide true knowledge, no one would be in need of the authentic path. Ordinary awareness, limited to the senses and thinking activity, does not overcome human frustrations. Rather, it obscures the stream of pure awareness. The victorious ones have made it clear that the thoughts and perceptions of samsaric sentient beings are deluded. How is it then that these deceptions, arising from our grasping at appearances, impress themselves upon us? our innate potential for experience gets into the habit of trying to grasp experience through thought. It is automatically compromised by this grasping activity. The clarity of awareness becomes obscured, and a certain lack of clear awareness settles in. The varied forms which appear to the senses and thinking mind then seem to exist in and of themselves, independently. The obscuring power of this habitual tendency grows over time. We are caught up in this obscuration. Our innate potential for experience presents itself as these appearances. This happens in a way similar to meditation on the human form, as consisting only of bones. Over time, one begins to see only bones in place of normal human forms. Due to this continuing stream of accumulating tendencies, the mind also objectifies its own being and imagines it to be a distinct self. But such a self does not actually exist. This mistaken way of structuring all experiences is no longer seen for what it is, because of the habit of being caught up in experience, and because of the obscuring tendency of this habituation. Our conceptualizing hinders us, and as a result, we no longer see clearly. We lose the true perspective on appearances due to our continuous efforts to grasp experience by means of thinking. Concepts such as self and entities proliferate due to this unstable grasping activity. we do not see how this fundamentally structures our experience, how our mental conditioning and habitual tendencies lead to the idea that there is a self. Along with notions about liberating this self. The continuum of existence consciousness makes possible an unlimited variety of actions. Making the duration of our habitual tendencies potentially endless and beyond our reckoning. When these karmas mature, a human body with human mental conditioning appears. In a similar manner, other tendencies lead to other forms of life. Such is the power of this process of change. Some believe that all this happens due to a divine being, like Shiva or Indra. But this way of thinking does not lessen anyone's suffering or result in liberation. Failing to understand how this structuring of our experience comes about, doubts arise in our minds, and the opportunities offered by a yogic path are missed. By imagining a self, one completely obscures one's potential and separates from the lineage of the Blessed Ones. Imagining that entities and things truly exist, we open ourselves to many kinds of vexation, including being born in the lower realms. We tend to fixate on certain qualities in the field of our experience. Perception then seems to be eightfold, just because of this, although it is not so in its essential function. In the first moment of sentient experience, our body and its varied functions are present. but due to thinking about and fixating on objects of attention in our habitual way. In later moments, experience flows accordingly. For unevolved people, and for the wise as well, nothing exists but the continuum of experience. The kind of experience that arises for each of the 6 types of sentient beings arises due to their habitual modes of seeing. Since a continuum of awareness is intrinsically without demarcations, to call it one is meaningless. All the innumerable fields of experience are in reality one's own being. The form we designate as our body may appear likewise in the infinite fields of the bodies of other people. Our minds and habitual tendencies are not one, nor are they many. And so it is exceedingly difficult to arrive at a fixed determination about anything whatsoever. All that appears unfolds according to dependent origination. Things born eventually come to an end. However, as with a burnt seed, a non-existent result cannot arise from a non-existent cause. Ultimately, there is no such thing as cause and result. Our minds are obsessed with real things. Therefore, we think of these real things in terms of cause and result, and in terms also of causes and conditions. However, cause and effect do not exist, nor do originations and cessations, nor do self and other. And because there is ultimately no transformation and no death, permanence and annihilation are also non-existent. This being the case, neither samsara nor nirvana truly exist either. Since our habituating tendencies are produced by trying to grasp experience with thought, something completely mistaken. These tendencies we have spoken of do not truly exist. If these do not exist, their area of operation does not exist either. And the fundamental structuring of experience, including perceptual and cognitive activities, cannot be said to truly exist. Boundaries and demarcations do not actually exist in our actual perceptual experience. And so a specific location for anything does not actually exist either. How then do cognition and perception arise? The nature of experience is beyond all our limiting notions of existence and non-existence, and cannot be understood as either a unity or a multiplicity. The arising of clarity from within our confused self-deception comes about when presence makes itself known. It becomes apparent to those who have been deluded. The ground of being cannot be found, even when searched, nor can awareness. Yet they purify all the concepts raised up by the thinking mind. Because we use thought to grasp, and because we objectify the field of appearances and the positive activities connected with pure awareness, we imagine that things really come into existence. Since the ground of being and radiant awareness are not to be found when investigated, and thus do not exist, they must be understood to be incapable of bringing about outcomes. Since we cannot demarcate and identify this radiant awareness, how then can we speak of momentary events that presumably depend on it? Since the source of all pure, positive qualities, Samantabhadra, cannot be found or proved to exist, how can radiant awareness, which pertains to worldly matters, be validated either? There is nothing to accept or reject, since presence and lack of presence cannot be said to exist or not exist. There is thus no state of an awakened one to attain, and no status of a samsaric being to reject. We use terms such as non-duality, beyond thought, openness, presence, the ineffable, and so on. All of them are merely conceptual designations. When ultimate reality does not exist, except by way of conceptual designation, then neither does a state lacking in clarity, except conceptually. To say that anything is ultimately real is itself a kind of obscurity, not clarity. Since there is no actual field of appearances and meanings, and no meditator who fully comprehends, the duality of true and false does not exist. Therefore, being doubt-free regarding what is real, or doubt-possessed due to lack of insight, are both baseless. The non-existence of both meditator and object of meditation means that there can be no doubt and no authentic insight. When we investigate our notions about the existence of things, we find them to be non-existent, even as mere appearances. There can be no non-existence if there was no existence in the first place. Although we can talk of them, none of these are ever found. Our limiting notions about existence and non-existence are fantasies. Therefore, the middle between these two fancied extremes cannot be held to truly exist either. When all things are seen to be alike and present in sameness by the non-conceptual, non-dual mind, there is no need to reject anything. Seeing deception where there is only sameness is itself a deception. Even false views and teachings and wrong actions need not be judged and rejected. Since skillful action and wise discernment do not truly exist, engaging in them is a kind of limitation. If there is intellectual pride, attachment and aversion are sure to arise, and then disputes are bound to follow. The lack of awareness implicit in all of this means that the real point is not recognized concerning the merely notional status of concepts like true and false. Agitation of the mind is limitation. The practice of abiding in presence is subtle. One does not need to rest in a state where there is an absence of the movement of thoughts, nor in the absence of non-movement of thoughts. When there are no deceptive appearances, it is known by the awakened ones as the primordial continuum of pure presence. If you strive to go beyond grasping at form, identifiable traits and wishful thinking, you are likely to fall into extremes of acceptance and rejection. But non-conceptual cultivation is without acceptance and rejection. Form itself is open dimensional. Desire is not different from absence of desire, and there is nothing to eliminate. Elimination of attachment, aversion, and ignorance while seeking nirvana is an activity of limitation. This kind of practice fails to comprehend the equanimous nature of everything. There is no samsara to eliminate, and no nirvana for which to strive. Apart from the path of abiding as presence, there is no other way to realize the freedom of the enlightened ones. True cultivation does not require a thought to be eliminated upon arising, nor does one generate a support for the mind because of the non-arising of thoughts. Nor does one realize or attain any ultimate reality or any goal. If even the slightest thought stirs that is not the wisdom of Manjushri, that too is still the domain of gnosis. But we do not strive to remain in this or any other condition. It is impossible to obtain a point of reference which could serve as a basis for meditation. Nor will one obtain a result from meditation. Grasping experience by conceptual designation, which is how the egoic mind operates, is itself the energetic display of the nature of reality, Dharmadhatu. Objects that appear in the mind are also the radiant display of the ineffable. beings wander in samsara because they fixate on identifiable characteristics. And freedom from this grasping activity is freedom from samsara. Once we are free from fixating on perceptions, there is nothing that is superior or inferior. To be free from fixating on preferred perceptions, there being none that are better and none that are worse. This is the path to cultivate. Conditioned events are unborn in that they do not come about by external causes and conditions. Thus, they are beyond the domain of frustration and suffering. When one has thoroughly understood that there is no such thing as a thing, an entity, a sentient being, then everything that arises is without defect and incapable of causing frustration, confusion, ignorance, or suffering. This is the supreme state of having overcome all emotional problems and their roots. Space cannot be objectified. It is a mere name. Nothing arises or appears which is either positive or negative for anyone. In true cultivation, the mind does not seek or strive, nor is it directed toward anything. There is freedom from knowing, and freedom also from not knowing. There is no application of antidotes in meditation, no delight in acceptance or rejection of anything whatsoever. Nothing is objectified, and there is unbroken awareness and understanding of sameness, and no creation of duality. The mind is at rest, beyond the domain of words. neither is there activity or inactivity, or accumulation of merits, or downfalls due to defilements, or mistakes. The mind is not seeking anything. One is not disturbed by anything. Knowing the basic sameness of all appearances, there is no concern about being entranced by objects or attachments to anything whatsoever. One neither avoids nor dwells on anything that may arise in the mind. In this practice, the overcoming of limitation is known. The nature of presence is known. The face of ever-fresh awareness is known. The underlying undifferentiation of all appearances is known. And imperturbability in all kinds of conditions is known. Cultivation of Dharmakaya is the path. If one's cultivation strays from this, transparent clarity does not arise. Recognition through symbols is also presence, as the teacher has made clear. Symbolic means are in fact a basis for the cultivation of presence itself. Symbolic encounters such as the sky, the heart mantra, and so on, are the action of the awakened one and bring direct encounter with the primordial continuum. By cultivating this commitment to Vajra reality, all paths are unmistakably cultivated. Nothing that is positive, whatever it may be, needs to be thought of as outside the action of the all-good. That which is not taken up becomes a form of limitation, and it will ultimately come to an end and be exhausted. Even the activity of so-called limitations is the action of pure presence for one who is a knower of the presence. Strong interest in the primordial presence is itself praised by the victorious one as presence in action. Having first-hand experience of the pure continuum of presence, one overcomes all limitations and transcends all objects of veneration in the three worlds. This hidden activity of those who are fully consecrated to abiding in presence is the highest form of skillful action. If the primordial presence did not exist, then the victorious ones could never have appeared, and the various paths and teachings would never have been taught. In a mere instant, the power of trusting confidence is such that one becomes the youthful Manjushri. All commitments and ethical undertakings are fulfilled by full commitment to presence. If the merit of presence had form, then even the boundless extent of space would be too small to contain it, as the victors have made clear. Individual sentient beings have been, will be, and are being born in various life forms, and have come under the power of the stream of birth. Not understanding how the mind is forever grasping at experience by means of thought, not knowing the implications of this habitual activity, sentient beings are deceived. The flow of thoughts never ends, and there is thus no chance of their turning away from delusions. By the power of illusions, these beings lose their happiness in the same way that a dream is imagined to be real. Those who live under the sway of dreams reject the path of liberation and look to other paths which are extreme. They teach these paths as unerring, in a way that resembles those who pronounce stone to be gold. These deserve compassion, the spontaneous compassion that arises in the hearts of the noble ones. Sentient beings who suffer due to worldly conditions and do not exercise right discernment have difficulties in understanding this pure teaching. They rely on the words of the teaching, but do not understand their meaning. Various points of view arise, each confirmed by individual minds according to their capacities. A river of misunderstanding separates such sentient beings from the nectar of the pure teaching. For this reason, though primordial experience of pure presence is the unexcelled way taught by the victorious ones, and also the field of activity proper to all realizers, I have personally undertaken to validate the truth of this teaching for myself through long experience and by valid avenues of approach to the supreme knowledge. Through the composition of this work on the unexcelled path of non-duality, and for the sake of all sentient beings, may all obstacles diminish, and may the primordial experience of the victorious ones spread far and wide.